Hi, and welcome to the Route to CISO Podcast. It's me, Chris Rides. I'm going to be your host, and I'm going to be chatting to seasoned Chief Information Security Officers about their career journeys. We're going to be unencrypting their real-life stories and searching for the hidden keys to help you fast-track your cybersecurity career. Welcome to the Route to CISO Podcast. With me today, I've got Chris Bates from Sandbox AQ. We had a great brunch, maybe it was breakfast. I don't know. It's kind of somewhere brunchy breakfast at Black Hat the other week. So it's great. We've already met in person, and I think this is going to be a fascinating talk through his experience. So thank you for joining us, and thank you for being willing to chat about your career with me.
All right, thank you. Thank you for the invite.
So should we jump in? I would love to sort of just give people a little overview of what you're doing right now, and then we'll fly into the questions.
Cool. Currently, I am the Chief Information Security Officer for a company called Sandbox AQ. It's a spin out of Google's Moonshot Factory, X, basically trying to marry quantum technologies with artificial intelligence to solve real-world problems, high impact. So it's pretty cool. I also do a lot of advisory work for startups. So I'm currently on like 4 or 5 advisory boards. I also do angel investing, and I also do work with a couple of VC firms. So
excellent. I'm lucky to have you on here. So I know when we sat down for breakfast, like all the other CISOs were sort of chatting, and there was loads of interesting conversations going about. So thank you again for joining us. So let's dive in to like sort of how did you even get into cyber? What was that foundation?
Well, I actually kind of got started in tech cyber/IT back in 1996, building some of the first dial-up ISPs over in Central Oregon. And that had some security, but also IT. So I built one for my friend. He paid me some money. Then a little while later, someone else came and asked me to help him build one. I did that. They paid me a bunch of money, so I figured you could make a lot of money doing that. And so I have been in the IT cyber world ever since, kind of walking the line on both sides of it, which I think you have to do, right? Anything from database programmer to backend programmer to incident responder to security analyst to architect to all of those things. So
yeah, I think it's embedding, like even more so now. I think literally even outside of the tech world, right? Security is embedding itself in every sort of business unit, and I know that's a core requirement for a CISO. So I'm sure we'll get to that bit. So you started helping out a few friends, and did you actually study or go to college in the technology field?
I was going to college and I dropped out because I can make more money.
Me too. I never went to college either. So yeah, I think there's a bunch of us, and I'm actually it's exciting now to start seeing things like just very recently, the government have stopped requiring degrees for many of their roles, right? There's so many people in our industry that are self-taught, that are amazing security people, and companies miss out on them because they have these fixed rules of having to have degrees and those sort of things. So it's good to hear that you didn't necessarily have to come through that way.
Nope, I did not.
Yep, good. Me too. Obviously, I'm not the technical side of things. I've gradually got a little bit more technical experience, as you do when you work in the industry for so long. But I didn't feel like that I needed a degree, and I think got my experience. And I think as I said, there's a number of people that have done that and done really well. So sort of looking at people nowadays that are trying to get into security, what sort of tips and ideas, do you think much has changed from when you tried to get in?
Yes and no. I mean in a lot of ways there's lots of positions, and what they're really looking for is people who are very good at problem solving. I would say probably what has changed a little bit is back in the early days, it was more about what you did technically, and it was really focused on the technologies. Now technology is a part of it, but you also have to have fairly good people skills to be able to work and function well in teams and be able to actually understand the business more than you did probably back in the late 90s, early 2000s. So
yeah, I think I've seen some of that, like throughout the discussions I've had. I've seen people talking about understanding the business side earlier and earlier in your career and how important that is. So it's certainly come up as we talk about attributes and things later on. That business side certainly comes up as that aspect, and I think the earlier you understand that, the better. Or I don't know, the better, but the increased impact that you can give in the roles that you do get. So that's good. So you kind of went through, you realized that this was the area. How did you actually get into that first job, that first cyber role?
The first cyber role is basically I got a job securing. I was working for a startup, and the job was basically running and securing their internet systems back in like 1998. They were trying to do VoIP, enable VoIP websites back in 1998. Kind of, I would say, a little early to do that, but yeah. So that's I got my first job there, and then just kind of stayed kind of back and forth, mainly on the cyber side, but back and forth. So
Yeah. So when sort of crossed in between, was already a
yeah.
technologist. Was there, at what point did you get that first very dedicated, where you knew this was just kind of a very, like very, or I mean, even would you clarify it or keep it as a very dedicated cybersecurity role?
I think the very first like dedicated cybersecurity role I had was probably a company called New Scale Power, where I was
Mhm.
brought on to build their cybersecurity program from scratch. They're a nuclear R&D company, so they're basically building a small modular reactor which can't melt down. So if you're into green energy or solving, power problems, it's a good technology to have.
That's crazy. Like I'm sure we'll go through, but already like obviously looking at what you do now and hearing about some of these roles, obviously there's these companies seem to have a real big impact in the industry, and it sounds like you're doing things that are making a difference, if that makes sense. So moving on, you sort of kind of flip-flopped in between sort of technologist and dedicated security roles and things that combined the both. At what point did you get that first leadership position?
It was New Scale. I was brought on to actually build a cybersecurity team. So play number one, and then I hired like, probably a small team. I think there were 6 guys under me when I left. So
That's like that must be really interesting because I feel like CISOs, there are different types of CISOs, there are different places in their career, um, and like being that first person in a small business, often that can be a really quick. I find anyway that could be a really quick route to CISO because as the de facto, maybe not the CISO because they might not give you that title as the one
Mhm.
security person, but there's an opportunity there to build a team and become the CISO there. What's kind of the differences when you're doing that sort of hands on, and then how do you progress through to roles that are a little bit less hands on?
Well, again, I think it's more about aligning with the business, right? Because in the end, right, you've got to implement a few things by yourself, but then as you hire people, your job becomes more about studying what those people are supposed to do. What are their guardrails? What do you expect from them? How do you enable them? How do you coach them, right? And how do you make sure that they understand the what and the why from the business, so they understand actually, what they're doing and why they're doing it. Why is it important, right? Versus just work. And I think as you move up, if you can navigate that change from being a technologist, hands on keyboard, and being much more of I would say, a translator, right? In a lot of ways, translating business to cyber risk to business, and translating how people talk, across the orgs and facilitating that, then that's usually how you move up.
How do people develop those kind of skills? Because it sounds like you went into a brand new role, which was kind of hands on and leadership.
Mhm.
What did you do to develop, or what do you see other people, outside or within your teams doing to develop those skill sets?
A lot of self-education. So read a lot of books, go to certain classes, learn how to talk to people, right? And I think in the end, find some mentors, right? That are effective and do that. I mean, prior to that dedicated role, I was working for a company. Originally it was Lockheed Martin, and then it became ACS, then it became Xerox. But they were a big IT/security outsourcer. So like we ran all of the IT and security for Nike for like 5 or 6 years, and I was in a leadership role there. So I didn't have any direct reports, more of a matrixed organization as a consultant. But anyway, so you just have to learn to talk and deal with that. And I think in some ways, once you can flip that switch and find out you actually can get more work done, usually by being the person who can facilitate those connections and guide those people and mentor those people than you ever can by yourself, then normally I think that kind of makes people want to do that, right?
Yeah,
Makes them more impactful.
yeah. It's funny when I think of that. I think one of the biggest challenges I had, and some of the biggest challenges I see other people have, is sometimes letting go. Because if you're really good in one aspect of your job, and I'm not a technologist, but let's say you're a really strong technologist, And when you're bringing in people there that, sometimes it's quicker for you to do the job than it is to teach them or help them do it. So giving up that authority and putting the trust into the people around you, and that's how you can really, only true way you can build a business and build a team. But often that's a really big step to do. Did you have any challenges with that, or have you seen challenges with that?
I think as you mature, you don't you, I mean, once you understand like how you scale a company, I mean, yeah, I could maybe do it faster, but in the end, I've got a lot of other things I need to be doing. And, to scale, I've got to get them up to speed, right? I'm a firm believer that honestly, as a leader, you should be working yourself out of a job every 3 to 4 years. I mean, your team should be, for the most part, so completely self-sufficient to where you're not really providing them anything but kind of cover, mentoring, guidance. But I mean, they should be able to run without you, with no issues.
Yeah.
So
So it's like succession planning, really, like knowing you're already knowing who you've got stepping up, who the next person is, and moving it forward like that. So if somebody's like trying to go from an individual contributor and trying to move into that leadership role,
Mhm.
like obviously, have you got any tips, anything? Obviously, they can understand the business. Is there anything they can do to help them increase maybe that communication skill or the ability
Mhm.
to connect with people?
Well, I think number one, leadership skills, right? So there's a lot of good books, Extreme Ownership, Tribal Leadership. There's a lot of good books out there that help you understand how leaders work within corporations, how good leaders work, and more importantly, how bad leaders work. So you don't want to be a bad leader. Um, so I think those are very critical. And then there's a lot of books on communication, right, and understanding business. So what I do honestly is I go out and I spend probably an hour and a half, 2 hours a day walking because I have a big dog, and I listen to audiobooks. So basically, every time I'm walking, I'm listening to some type of book that helps me improve my career, give me another take on something, helps me learn something. So I think that continual self-learning is critically important,
Yeah,
and
I
not
like
from
that.
a technical standpoint, but from a soft skill standpoint, right?
Yeah, yeah. The I think that get like mixing the thing of like getting out, walking, like it does help if you've got a dog or something that forces you to get out and do it. But I think almost like scheduling time that isn't sitting at your desk, that isn't sitting there reading a book, that's kind of getting you out and helping you. It's strange how, but I think it really helps you focus when you're out and moving while you're doing this stuff.
No, I think that helps. I mean, it also just keeps people healthy and happier. So one of the things I used to implement and still do is like I try to schedule all my one-on-ones like back to back to back, and then I have them go out and walk, and I'm walking when I'm talking to them because I mean, in the end, for the most part, you don't need to be in front of a computer, right? So therefore, it gives them some exercise, it gets them out of the house, it gives them something to do. They don't have to, but for the most part, most people do that. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I found I think that was my secret for the like when the pandemic hit, and my office by that point had become the baby's room, so I had a crib in there, and then my wife was working from home in the living room, and then I was trying to work from the other bedroom, apartment living in LA at the time, and that was a real struggle. And in the end, I did exactly what you described there. Is I stacked all my meetings in the morning and all my telephone calls, and I just made them telephone calls. I didn't need to be in front of a screen for them. I could walk along, and I walked up and down the beach in Marina Del Rey. And I think I was probably one of the few people that lost weight during during COVID. Everybody else was inside and no gyms to go to, whereas I was walking up and down for sort of
mhm.
4 or 5 hours a day. It wasn't unusual for me to do like a 10-mile walk um, over the whole of a morning, just where I was just sitting there working and doing
Yeah.
calls. So yeah, I think that's great, and I like to do. I don't know whether you get this. It's probably going a little bit off topic, but sometimes I feel like I get that kind of video call fatigue. I have so
Mhm.
many video calls. Everything's scheduled as a video call, and half of them don't need to be video calls. I've met most of them before. They know what I look
Yeah.
like. We just need to pick up the telephone and have a normal call. So I've been trying to make an effort to do more of that.
Mhm. No, I agree. I mean, if it's just a sync call, status check in, there's no need for it to be a video call, frankly.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Okay. So you've got your leadership role. What did your career move look like as you moved up from that sort of building a small team up through to getting your very first sort of CISO level position?
Well, so after that, I left that company and I decided I wanted to try consulting. So I went and joined RSA as a one principal consultant in their advanced cyber defense team. Um, that didn't work out. I didn't like that. It was just, I don't know, too fluffy for me. So then I joined as lead incident response manager for a company called Fidelis Cybersecurity. So kind of running first guy of the airplane in 24 hours, talking to the customer, scoping the breach, getting logistics stood up, getting the teams to fly in, starting that whole process, and then kind of oversight and monitor that, right? So I worked on that for a while. After that, I went and joined Nike and helped build out the back office of the CISO. So like the strategy function and the budget function and all those things. And then I left that and joined SentinelOne, and I became CISO SentinelOne about 1.5 years after I joined, 2 years.
Brilliant. Nice. And then, so looking at those career steps, like a couple of things that I sort of noticed. One thing was the Nike thing. Had you worked with any of those people before? Because you'd worked previously for the company that did the Nike like IT department work.
Yeah, so actually, Nike went through, basically they had decided to upscale their cybersecurity I would say 12 months before I joined. So they hired a senior team from MasterCard, and then they brought a bunch of people over. So it grew very large. But no, all
And
new
then
people.
and then how did you, each of those kind of roles, how did you get those? How did you make the move from sort of one to the next? I'm just trying to see if there are any patterns, any things that some of the listeners can sort of pick up on.
Network. I mean, it's really about your network. Who do you know? What's going on? Do you know people there? And even hearing about these types of things, right? Even if you care about them, right, is critically important. So, and I think that's kind of how I've moved. Is it's a lot of like internal. It's not all. It doesn't come from job postings. I mean, you can find them via job postings, but for the most part, it's much more about your network. So,
Yeah. There's a pattern of that, and I think most of any of the talks and things that I do, I talk all about network, and everybody I meet, the only reason I got a business is truly because I spend the whole time networking, right? I spend the whole time at these conferences talking, being involved in the community. It's like, who do you know and how can they connect you? And far more roles get filled by networking than they do by answering an advert. You got to be really lucky to get plucked from the pile of resumes that come in from an advert. So yeah, 100%. Now you're at SentinelOne, and after a year and a half, did you say you got moved up to CISO? How did that come about? Because that's kind of the dream, right? Sorry?
I would say 1.5 years, 2 years.
Yeah.
I'd have to go back and find exact. How it came about was originally joined, I chose to join SentinelOne. I could have joined CrowdStrike. I could have joined other companies. I chose SentinelOne because I felt it had the best technology, the best vision. First year I was there is all about revenue. So I'll bring in revenue. And then I moved over to the product and helped like really kind of shore up the product vision. And then I was voluntold that I was the CISO, and I inherited a failed FedRAMP project and had X amount of time to get it over the line. So
Voluntold, and here's a project that wasn't working.
Yep.
Nice. And what?
But by then I built a reputation of execution and leadership and problem solving. So
Yeah, they know who you were. They know what you'd managed to do, and I guess they're looking at internally who can get this done. What were the things you did to take a failing project and turn it round? Was there anything? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of complexities there, but anything simple that you kind of did that you think would be a great piece of advice for anybody that?
I did a quick, lay of the land inventory, kind of where is it, or why has it, failed, to this point. And we did that analysis in like the first couple of weeks I took it over. And then we made a pretty drastic, bold change, and brought in some people and brought in some technologies and did it. So
you make these things sound very simple. I'm sure they're not. And then how did you? So obviously we even talked. This was your first black hat as not being a vendor CISO. So like, how did you then move from SentinelOne to is Sandbox AQ your move that you made after SentinelOne? This is your most recent.
Yeah, no, I took some time off. Yeah, I took some time off to like de-stress, frankly, and then Sandbox is where I joined after SentinelOne. Yes,
I feel like there's I feel like a lot of the vendor roles are very high stress. So I speak to a lot of the the CISOs, like whether they're field CISOs or the CISOs of those companies, and I don't know whether it's all of them, but they're certainly, I don't know whether it's the element that a lot of them have to be involved. Like it's not just doing the CISO role, you're doing that front-facing CISO role, you're talking to clients, or a lot of people are involved in maybe potential client calls or big deals and being pulled into stuff like that. But it seems like they're very stressful positions if I look across the CISOs I know that are in them.
Yeah, I would. I mean, the way I look at it, especially for cybersecurity CISOs, right? In the end, the company is cybersecurity companies sell trust. They don't sell products. They sell trust, and they have software that does things. But if you don't trust the company, you're not going to use the product, right? And so, like the entire brand of a cybersecurity company is really tied up in the trust program that's out there, and that's really kind of incumbent on the CISO to make sure that stays the way it is. So, like other companies can get breaches, and yeah, they kind of recover. A cybersecurity company gets a breach, and it may not recover from said breach, right? Or it may be really brutal. So, like failure could really end up wiping out like half the retirement for everyone in the company. That's a lot of stress when you think about it that way. Not only that, but like they tend to have privileged access to hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of customers through their SaaS solutions. Like, so bad guys all the time want to figure out how can I use the SaaS as my backdoor, right? Because if I can use the SaaS as the malware and I don't need to write my own malware, then that's kind of a win. So you also have a very high attack surface. And then you have, I would say, very competitive in a very quick iteration cycle. So if you look at how fast cyber is moving, probably compared to almost any other space, AI, you could argue, is moving at the same speed or quicker. But any other space, there's just tons of forward progress. And when there's forward progress, there's always chances for human error, right? And human error, of course, is a problem if you have vulnerabilities and things like that. So how do you start building all of these programs to mitigate all of that risk as you function, as you move at breakneck speed? So it is a pretty stressful job.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine you're juggling an awful lot of different things and additional things to most CISOs in commercial aspects as well.
I think a lot of cyber guys also a lot of I should say CISOs in cyber own IT as well. Some of them own physical security, so trust and safety. So not only is it the cyber side of the house, but it's also how do you deal with critical incidents like hurricanes and or I don't know, a war in Ukraine and you got to get people out of Ukraine, or you got to get people out of Russia, or wildfires and things like that. So I mean there's a whole variety of things that tend to be scoped into, I would say chief security, chief information security, especially at these more cyber focused companies.
Yeah. And then I feel like generally like the CISO roles can be quite high stress. You talked a little bit about sort of getting out, walking your dog, listening to audio books that sort of, good quality business audio books. But have you got any other things that you did that really helped with you de-stressing, or even the time you took off in between? Was there anything you did that you thought you would be like, you should totally do this?
Well, I mean, the time I took off, absolutely. Because when I took it off, I kind of like, I stopped checking my phone. I kind of really unplugged from the whole information security space for about 6 months. Just unplugged from it all. Like no tech, no nothing. And just kind of realigned myself. I think while you're living it, it's really, really hard, because the other thing is almost all these companies are global companies. So there is no real on or off, right? You're on 24/7. And you can have the best incident response processes, but in the end, you're also on call 24/7, right? So there's just no real good way. I mean, like as an example, I don't remember a single vacation I took at Sentinel One where I didn't end up having to work.
Yeah, that's rough. Yeah, well, as a business owner, I know exactly how that is, right? Yeah, I mean, 2012 was the last time I had a vacation, and I've just switched my phone off and had a full vacation. So I can understand the benefits of getting to do that. So yeah, wow. So now you're on sort of the commercial side. Like talk a little bit about what you're doing with Sandbox AQ and maybe how the roles differed a bit.
Well, I think the role is different here because, again, I think it's kind of more. I do a lot of, I would say things that not only our security would do, but I'm also getting into technology, providing guidance on the technology and how they're doing it. So Sandbox has theory is we use quantum technologies and AI. So a couple of those use cases would be we currently have magnetic navigation flying with the Air Force prototype. So based on the anomalies of the magnetic field of the Earth, which we can pick up via these sensors, using AI to remove the various noise from that to get to pure signal, we can plot where you are pretty closely anywhere on the globe. And so we all know GPS is jammable, GPS is now spoofable. So what is the backup navigation system for GPS that will be reliable, right? And inertial navigation tends to become less and less reliable the longer you fly. This won't have that. And same technology applied differently, as an example, which we're currently doing testing in cardio units, could replace EKGs. It's currently showing to be much more effective at diagnosing and detecting heart issues than EKGs are. That's just a couple examples of one of the things that we do. Another one is we have a team of very smart people who are currently working with drug companies to do modeling. So like drug company comes to us, here's the couple hundred molecules and or, that we think will be the next new drug that will do this. We can actually model how they will interact within the human body and get them from these 200 compounds down to the 2 or 3 that we think most likely will be effective in human trials, which cuts that discovery. And you can do the same thing with applied materials, battery chemistry, things like that. So
It's crazy.
it's a very interesting company. So yeah.
Yeah, must be. I feel like it's absolutely fascinating to see what's going on. And you're really at the forefront of everything, right? Of how all this technology is going to be used. So I'm sure. Do they let you go out and do you get to speak about any of this stuff, sort of in a wider sort of? Could you go on to security? And I don't know, when you're at the cutting edge, I feel like
You can
it's a
speak
little
on some
bit.
of it. I mean, I do some fireside chats, and our CEO is very, very vocal out there. You can find him on YouTube all over talking about it. So yeah, but a security standpoint, it's how do we secure, like, again, the money is in the data. Like if you look at the cardiac as an example, we get all the scan data into a centralized database. Here's an example of something that, a thought that, let's say you go out and you got scanned by this device a year and a half ago, and let's say 2 months ago, we found a new novel way to detect an unknown heart defect to this point. And it's basically the detection would be an AI algorithm. We can run that through the historical data of every scan, and maybe you have that. And we can actually then alert your doctor based on something that happened a year and a half ago.
Wow. Wow, it's exciting. It's exciting where the world's going with
Yeah.
all this sort of stuff, and making sure that it's secure. Of course, can't do this
But yeah,
without
no,
making
it all
sure
has to
that
be,
it's,
secure at scale.
yeah,
Correct.
yeah. So, like going back to your career, if you look at sort of like, was there any a point where you've had to maybe take a step backwards, or gone what may people may see as a sideways view, or be scratching their head like, oh, I wonder why Chris did that sort
Well,
of
I
thing.
mean, I went from managing a small team of people to being just a consultant for RSA. Then I went from RSA to being an instant responder, leading people, and then I went from RSA into Nike on their strategy and operations to build that program out. So it's been a very windy, from a tech to a management to a matrix leader, back and forth. When I first joined One, I joined because I wanted to really get in to join a cybersecurity vendor. And so I joined, and originally it was about revenue. So we went and we sold a bunch of things and made a bunch of revenue, and then it was about product. Okay, so I duplicated the team. What I was doing, hired some people to do it, and then moved over into the product side of the house. And then I got moved into the CISO side of the house, and then I ended up inheriting security, and then I ended up inheriting IT and physical security and data analytics and governance and SaaS ops. I was under me at one point. So just be a person who can solve multiple problems.
How do you, when you start getting given all of these different departments under you, what's your secret for sort of managing each of those? And like, have you got like a formula that you use to, okay, as soon as I get something, this is what I do first, and then this is who I identify? Have you got something that you tend to do?
Um, number one, I try to keep them all as peers, so they're all peers under me, right? So I break them into towers for the most part. And then number two, I hire very experienced leaders in those towers. Like the guy I have running IT, I want him to know by far more about IT than I know, right? The guy who's running data, I want him to know by far more about data than I know, right? Because I can be a generalist, but my job at this level is to really translate from the business to these guys. These are the objectives I need you to hit. Here's how we're going to measure success. Here's the guardrails. Give me your plan. Let's execute the plan. And then my job is to remove any roadblock that blocks the plan. Provide them air cover, from all the other executives and, things like that. I think the other thing that's critical that I tell all my teams, all the way down to the IC, is basically the individual contributor is your success at any company, especially in cyber, is going to be a lot about the network you build within the company and how you communicate, right? You can be the smartest guy in the world, but if you can't communicate with your peers across the company, like you can be the best AppSec guy in the world, but if you can't communicate to the R&D team, you're not going to be very effective at what you do. You know what I mean? You can be the best analyst in the world, but if you can't communicate to who you need to communicate to, then you're not going to be very effective at what you do, right? So a lot of things, it's about the people, the network you build, right, and the relationships you build. Those are probably as valuable, if not more valuable, in a lot of ways than your technical skills at most companies.
That's a nice input because I think when I went out and you'll know this already, and I'm sure by this point, hopefully the audience knows this because I've talked about it enough. But obviously, I've been going out asking these CISOs about the attributes. I think that was the very first attribute that when you reply back to me, it was communication and relationships. Like 100%, I've got like that's certainly in the top three. If I look at the top 10 of everything that I've been sent, communication will absolutely be right up there in probably the top two or three most popular, most commonly given attribute answered, I guess. What were for you? What were the top three, and then for each one, like, have you got any tips on how you can develop those, how you can get better?
So I think, well, number one, I think leadership, like you're in a leadership position. So actually understanding, what good leaders like servant leadership, distributed, chain of command, those types of things, I think are critical. Number two, communication, because again, it's about, businesses always operate. Risk is a very gray area. So it's not like finance where it's kind of black and white. There's a lot of gray, right? And so to be a leader in cybersecurity, you have to be very comfortable operating in the gray because you're never going to get to the white and you're never going to get to the black for the most part. So it's just different shades of gray. And so you have to be very good at being able to go to your peers, like the CTO. We have this problem. Let's figure out how we're going to solve the problem to where it's going to introduce the least amount of friction to you. It's going to buy the risk down enough to where we're happy, and then we can accept it. And there's always going to be 4, 5, 6, 10 ways you can slice that. The question is, which ones can you agree on that you can move forward with, right? In a lot of ways. And that really comes from having that relationship built where, you can work together, right? And it's not confrontational. It's not like, oh, mine's more important than yours, back and forth. It's a give and take. So I think that's absolutely critical. And then I think number three, I would say the ability to deal with things that are very dynamic, right? If you're a person that's got to be very structured and have everything planned way out and you don't deal well with the disruptions, then this is not a good job for you. Not at all.
Yeah,
So,
it's as much about being strategic as it is being able to sometimes go with the flow and not panic.
no, I mean, it's going to be very tactical though. And that's the key is you've got to be able to jump in the middle of any situation and be the cool voice of reason in that situation, not just to the team under you, but it could be to your boss. It could be
Mhm.
to the legal department. It could be to outside counsel. It could be to the board. It could be to lots of different people, but you need to be that clear, level-headed, thinking through the problem and executing on the problem
With all of those
and
things, are
making
there
progress.
any outside of like obviously practicing what you do within the business, are there any additional areas, any additional things that people can do off their own back or any training or certifications? I know you mentioned a couple of books that you've read. Anything at all that you think, oh, like if you want to build those soft skills, here's a few ideas that work.
I think I would really recommend being active. Like there are communities that are out there. there are CISO only communities, which if you are a CISO, that can really help you build those, be active in those communities, tabletop exercises, things like that, their classes. But I would say that cybersecurity is kind of unique in that they have lots of communities and or tribes based on what you do and where you are and all these other things. And so become integrated into those things and learn from other people and find some good mentors.
Yeah, yeah. I think we're lucky to have a really welcoming community. You just sometimes just got to find where you belong or where makes most sense, and that place might change throughout your career. As you mentioned, there's some great CISO communities. So, that once you're a CISO, you'll have access to those. You might not have access to those before then, but there are plenty of places. Whether that's I don't know, maybe ISACs, you might be able to get involved in some of those through your companies. Certainly, having just literally come back from DEF CON, and by the time this is released, we'll be a few months past that. But there are so many different villages and so many different places, and I definitely think that's a very obvious place where you can see tribes of people sort of heading towards the areas that they're really interested in.
Mm-hmm.
Do you are you involved with any outside of that, any of the community stuff like I know like things like Cloud Security Alliance, ISSA, OWASP, a lot of them are quite popular places to connect and find people that can maybe mentor you or help you in your career.
So I do basically I am a mentor for Cyversity. I also do Women in Cyber Some. There's a couple invite-only CISO Slack groups out there, the Internet Security Leadership Forum, the National Chief Security Officers Forum. I'm members of those. So yeah.
Good. Yeah. In fact, Larry Whiteside Jr.
Mhm.
He recorded the very good friend of mine and just recorded the very first episode of this, and as you know, founded Cyversity, one of the founders of
Mhm.
Cyversity. So, yeah, good guy. All right, good then. Look, one of the areas that I look at when I think about you talked about building relationships
Mhm.
and leadership skills. Um, how do you go about identifying if you either take over a team or you're building a team? How do you identify sort of who are going to be the leaders of the future? Because I think that's quite a good thing for people to be able to say, oh, okay, if somebody's looking for that, how can then I can build those skills? What are the things that you look for?
Um, Well, again, we'll go communication skills, but also like if I'm coming into a new team and I'm looking at the team, trying to figure out who's going to be good and bad, I'm going to talk to every one of them, right? And how do they tell me what the problems are? Are they telling me the problems are because somebody else is really just sucks and blaming everybody else for the issues? Or are they actually coming and say, here's the issues and here's how we should fix them, and we should work with these teams. So it's really kind of understanding not only how they work in a team, but how they actually what's the problem, right? How do they actually fix a problem and understand it and figure out how to solve it? So I think those are critical to begin with, and just kind of how they're respected on the team, how they're not respected. So there's a lot of things that go into it, right? But I mean, again, to me, there's technology, 50% of the equation. Soft skills are critical.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it is tough when you've got somebody that's maybe an expert in a particular area, that's a technologist. It's very easy for some people to just, because people maybe look up to them in the team because of their
Mhm.
technical skills, sometimes it's very easy for them to be sort of pushed then towards into a leadership when in fact they're not naturally leaders. So it's hard
Yep.
to get that balance and identify it.
Well, they may not want to be leaders either, but that may be the only career path forward. I mean, a lot of companies don't actually provide career paths forward on a technical side of the house, right? You cap out pretty quickly if you just want to stay on the technical side of the house in most companies.
Right.
There's some that get into like, principal engineers and, other, like, up, so I think that's very valid, right? And I've talked to, yeah, I was a manager, but I don't like being a manager. I'd like to go back and do something else. Okay, let's make that happen.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because we're on the route to CISO podcast, but we're also it might be a whole bunch of people that are maybe watching this and thinking, well, I'm actually watching it not because I want to become a CISO, but I want to hear more about what a CISO does and
Mhm.
maybe I don't want to be one, right? That's probably not a conversation we've had so far. What are some of the challenges and some of the things that you think people need to consider before they even think, right, do I want to even become a CISO?
Well, I mean, I mentor a lot of people like you said versus the other ones, and I ask them that, why do you really want to be a CISO? And a lot of times it's more about compensation or prestige, which are not the right answers for the most part. Um, you really have to talk to them. It's like this job, while it pays well, usually, is very stressful and in a lot of ways very thankless, right? People don't remember the wins; they only remember the losses, and a lot of the time. And so you're in a very high stake game of win or lose. So. I think it really comes down to, do they have the right personality and do they really understand what the job is, right? And is that something they really want to do? Because money, you can make a lot of money in cyber and not be a CISO, right?
Yes,
A
totally.
lot of different ways. So, and probably have a better work-life balance, to be quite honest, and less stress. So I think it really is up to, why do they want to climb that ladder, right? And where do they see themselves? And are they just going to stop at CISO, or do they see CISO as a step to a CTO or to a COO, some other type of, or to advisory work as an example, or
Mhm.
VC work? Those are all very valid, but kind of why do they want to do it? Really examine that, not because it's the top dog, that's not a good reason to go for it. It's, where does it fit in?
Yeah, I do think there are some people that just see it as like that's the ultimate job in cybersecurity, and therefore that's
Mhm.
what I should aim for rather than what I'm interested in aiming for. And you
Mhm.
know, you see people that work their way up and then are in a situation where they're head of security or CISO, and they're like, actually I miss being hands on, or I miss this or miss that, and I don't like enjoy these parts of the job. So yeah, and it's a good thing to sort of overall like look at. Now you're mentoring a few people at Cyversity. Do you see any sort of common questions coming up from them? Are there sort of things that you see consistently that they're looking for?
I would say consistently, like they're trying to figure out, like, cyber is a very broad field at this point. I mean, it goes like anywhere from the GRC legal compliance side of the house all the way over to the operations side of the house, all the way over to threat intel. I mean, there's just a vast majority. So I think a lot of it is just them trying to figure out kind of what do they really want to do, and kind of where does that fit in the current cyber, ecosystem. And then a lot of times it's like, who do they want to work for, right? What is it like working for a technology company versus an insurance company versus a healthcare company, or the government, right? Kind of
Yeah,
what are the trade-offs to do
yeah.
those things?
Very different positions and very different salary structures, or even like types of roles. There's so many different things that impacts that. What when they're looking at like what kind of questions are they asking themselves when they're looking at trying to identify an area of security that they want to be in, or maybe they're working in an area of security and they don't enjoy it, and like
Well,
what?
a lot of these people are just starting in their security journey, so they haven't really started work, or they have very limited experience in different areas. So it's like, well, I may like pen testing. Okay, well, let's talk about, like, what do pen testing skills really morph into from a career standpoint in this industry, and how likely are they to be disrupted by technology, right? Coming, like automated pen testing,
Hmm.
and those types of things. To you know, is what is it like working for a tech company versus a cybersecurity company? Just things like that.
Yeah, we see. I have conversations with people. Obviously, most of the people we're placing, or pretty much all of them, are very experienced people. That's when companies hire us. They're not usually hiring us to get the entry level people in. But I still have a lot of conversations with those people, and I'm on some advisory boards, National Cybersecurity Training and Education Centre, and Washington's Cybersecurity Centre of Excellence. So I'm on these different advisory boards, where we interact with students. We find the people that are trying to get in, and it is interesting to see them, because some of the conversations are, people are, oh, I really want to get into security awareness. Well, companies don't have a whole, very few companies have a whole team of security awareness
Yep.
people, right?
Yeah.
Generally, those people are taken in, and if they're in there, they might be taken internally, like maybe a HR person's brought across and talked about security, and so like some of those conversations, they're tough ones to have, because people are like, this is what I want to do, and actually, oh, I love reverse engineering and I want to be a malware analyst. Well, you know, not many companies have a department doing
Yeah.
that, right?
No, I mean, like, even on the, like you said, security awareness, if that's really what you want to do, go work for a security awareness company that
Right.
delivers security awareness as a service. That's going to be your best bet.
Yeah, 100%. And with the pen, I mean, pen testing is probably the most popular answer I get from them. And
Mhm.
in truth, really, it's only the pen testing companies that tend to take on entry level pen testers, right? And then you're
Sure.
doing a lot of grunt work, right? So you're not going to
Well,
find a whole bunch of those positions.
and a lot of that's being more and more disrupted by services, right? So, I think pen testing is more it's the cool hacker vibe. I'm breaking into websites and doing all the exploit stuff, but in the end, is it really why? Is it because of how you envision that, or is it something you really enjoy doing? And if you really enjoy doing it, what is it? Is it coding? Is it finding exploits? Is it, so try
Yeah,
to get to the root cause and figure what really drives
yeah.
them.
Dig down and ask some solid questions and try and find out where you're going. I
Mhm.
actually point to a lot of people when they start talking about certifications, because that's the next conversation, right? They talk about their areas of
Mhm.
interest, and then it's the automatic one is, right, what certifications should I get to be in that? And I think that flows through a similar, for me, the answer's always been, what are you interested in? I don't get it because it's going to get you a job, because certifications rarely have much of an impact
No,
on that. Who you know has the biggest
they used to.
impact.
Yeah, they used to a long time ago, but not
Yeah.
now. I would say, yeah, I would look at what do you want to do and go get the training. I mean, by default, SANS is probably still the gold standard because it's all the hands-on training that actually gives you skills and then
Hmm.
certifies you, right? And then that's respected because at least now you have skills and you can talk it through at an interview versus not just, book learning. But for the most part, no, I would say go figure out what you want to do and then go find people who are successful in that area and talk to them.
Yes. Yeah, that's a great, I think that's where LinkedIn, like LinkedIn can really come in and help you network. I mean, obviously
Mhm.
going to conferences and being able to be in some of the same spaces that are relevant to that's always going to be the ideal world if you
Mhm.
can meet people face to face. But LinkedIn, there's some, so I often say to people like, look, when you're looking at who you're connecting with, if you're building your network, like look at the people that are doing the
Yeah,
job that you really want to do and connect with them, and maybe you ask them questions, maybe they reply, maybe they're too busy, but like at least build a network that you
yeah,
think might help you.
for sure. I agree.
Now, if you could go back to Chris in these early career days, what would be the sort of one piece of advice that you'd go back and give yourself that you think would have the biggest impact in your career?
Honestly, hindsight 2020, what would be to focus, right? So I went from, vendors to sellers to purchasers to lots of my career ran through lots of different companies, right? And if I look at people who chose one, like they chose to work in tech startups and they stayed in tech startups, they did one, two, three, four, five of them, or they chose to stay in healthcare and they did one, two, three, four, five of them. They tend to, I would say, progress quicker in their career
Right.
than you do as jumping from vertical to vertical to vertical to vertical, right? You get a lot broader experience. You can talk a whole lot more things, but if you want to look at just sheer career progression, uh, from and a finance progression also the most part it's better if you would have stayed in a single vertical better if I would have stayed in a single vertical so
Would
if
there
I
have
would have stayed
been,
in just doing startups from the time 1998 or 1999 moving on and on and on and I would be probably much better off than I did going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth
yeah,
as an example.
is it for you personally? Was there one that, like, was there an area of interest or a particular sector or industry area that you wish, okay, I wish if I'd have focused, I would have focused on that one?
I wish I would have got back in. I wish I would have joined the whole cybersecurity SaaS. So basically, the starting on the like cybersecurity SaaS when it really came out in the like 2010s, 12s. I had some friends who did it, and it looked really interesting. I just didn't do it because I was happy, but I should have.
But these things, like with all of these things, like you wouldn't be here where you are
Mhm.
now if you hadn't have done this, and this, right? You'd be doing something else. Maybe
Yeah,
it would have been better. Maybe it would have been the same. Maybe it wouldn't have been as good. We never know, right? Wish the sliding doors moments are amazing. It would be really, in hindsight, it's always nice
yeah,
to know. But I think that's a great piece of advice. You're the first
yep.
person to bring that up, and 100% I can say when I look at people that have sort of chosen an industry and become a specialist, they've definitely moved along a lot quicker I will say that the flip side of that, of course, is if that industry has some sort of downturn that isn't impacting everything else, all of a sudden you can be in quite, some real trouble, right? Because you haven't got the broad enough experience to maybe jump into something else. But like, I definitely agree with you. Like, if you're looking for a quick, and if you pick the right industry, things that aren't going anywhere, or you wouldn't imagine would go anywhere, then absolutely. And you see that. I see people in oil and gas. I see people in banking, finance, in insurance that have stuck in those industries. And I'm sure for some of the frustrations that some of those industries have compared to others, it's all some have these problems and these are great, and vice versa. I think you just probably get used to them and you understand. So that's great. Thank you. I only have like one final question for you, which I always kind of end it on, and that's like, you've been a hiring manager for a long time. You talked to me about your first leadership position and building a whole program out and a team out. If you look, there's a lot of people out there that are looking for work now. Some of them that are just trying to break into the industry. Some of them that are super experienced, and who knows, maybe they've been laid off or they're being pulled back. The big return to office is a big impact for a lot of people, and they're struggling with that because they don't live close to the office anymore. So they're trying to put themselves out there, trying to stand out from all of the other applications that come in for the job. What are the things that you think that stand out to you? What are the things that they need to do that will help them, pluck that resume out of the pile or actually be seen?
Well, I think getting the resume out of the pile is going to be really hard, because that's sorted by machines many times, frankly. And so, what I always do is I like, if I'm looking for a job and I want to go like work at a company, I try to find people at the company and I reach out and I talk to them. Hey, I'm thinking about applying. I have a few questions. Would you be willing to talk to me or not? Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. But it's a good way to start, mining your network to find that information that'll at least get your resume to the top. Because if it comes with, hey, I talked to Bob and Bob said it would be a good fit, then HR is more likely to call you, right? If you're looking at what they can do normally, like to prep for interviews and stuff, again, I would say, what have you done to improve your communication skills, your leadership skills? I don't care if I'm hiring you as a level 1 analyst or level 2 analyst or a level 3 analyst or something. Even a level 1 analyst has to have some leadership skills, whether it's, you can lead up, down, or horizontally, right? So being able to do that, I think, is pretty effective, right? And it changes how you communicate with people. It changes how you look at things. So I think those are very good things to have there.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, you're right. I think we've not talked about it or explained it as being sorted by machines, but they absolutely are. And probably to piggyback on your sort of connecting with people that work at the business, like if you've got quite a good sized network, should be working on that even when you're not looking for a job, because that at some point will become invaluable to you. But also maybe you can actually do a search on LinkedIn where you can look at past companies. So there could be an opportunity for you to look at somebody that maybe really well and you've got a good sort of relationship with, and it turns out they used to work there. And typically when that sort of stuff happens, you can find out, what was it like, do you still know people over there? And all of a sudden you've got that warm intro that just gets you past that pile, takes you out of the pile completely. That's what you're really aiming for.
Yeah, absolutely. So
yeah, no, great points. Thank you. It's been great chatting to you about this, getting to know more about your career. I don't know if there's anything any sort of particular ideas or anything you want to leave anybody with here as sort of a final thought. But I think with all your experience and the exciting area you're in now, I'm interested to hear what the company does going forwards.
Well, I'm sure if it's successful, you will see it in the news.
Sounds like, it's all very newsworthy stuff, right?
Yeah.
So let's. I'll look forward to that, and hopefully, I don't have to see you in the news, because.
Well, not. Well, that's a whole new thing when you talk about CISOs now, because now they can actually go to jail in theory.
Yes, indeed.
So,
yeah. That's probably another conversation for another time, D&O and all the other lovely stuff. Knowing what your contract looks like and understanding what the risks are in that. Yeah, yep. I'm sure that'll be another conversation at some point on here.
Yeah, for sure. Okay.
Good stuff. Thanks so much, Chris. Again, I appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll get to catch up again soon. We'll do another one of these Route to CISO breakfasts.
Yep, cool. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Route to CISO podcast. If there's something you really want me to ask on the next episode, or if you're a CISO who wants to inspire the next generation, please reach out. I'll leave a URL to my LinkedIn profile, and make sure you connect and message me there. We're always looking for feedback, so please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.